Welcome to Grow Her Wings, a podcast by the Malou Project, a 501c3 based in Jacksonville, Florida, with a mission to connect girls to aviation. We are your hosts, Jen and Carrie, and we invite you to join us as we meet new people, talk to old friends, and learn new lessons on the path to inspire more of us to grow our wings. Hey everybody, welcome back to Grow Her Wings for part 2 of our podcast featuring Col Samantha Col Weeks, a retired Air Force officer and pilot, as we continue to discuss her path to aviation and her advice for those of you that would like to join her.
Well, Jen and I have had the opportunity to speak with a doctor doing research on recruitment and retention of women in aviation. And you might have read, she published an article for women in aviation related to some of her things that she found. And part of that retention part is the balancing family. They want the career, they want the challenging career, but balancing the family. I think one of them was it's expensive, which the three of us found a way a little bit around the expensive part. But you touched on that a little bit with the get out of the thinking too much, that you wish you'd had that advice sooner, and then that we don't have a lot of those examples to look to. And that was one of the third things that she had pointed out, was the perception that it's a good old boys club. And I think that perception permeates because I didn't experience a lot of that. I don't know if the two of you did, but what advice would you give to somebody looking at that as those three things being the detractors: perception that it's a good old boys club, expensive, and how am I going to balance this want to have a family and this career? Because you've been part of all of that. Maybe we can help a little bit with that gap from 1997 to 2018.
Yeah, so the expense part, flying through the military, there's no expense part, right? So I don't know about you two, but when I took T3s at the Air Force Academy, I had zero flying experience going into it.
Same.
And my only experience going into pilot training was those few hours that we got in the T3. So I was a blank slate, just here to learn how to fly. I would have loved to have been able to take flying lessons back in high school. I might have taken one, but then cost became something that was insurmountable for me and my family in order for me to pursue that aspect. There are a lot more scholarships that are out there right now for younger people to learn how to fly. And I think that even within the Air Force, we have that. And those are phenomenal opportunities. But it's not necessary to get your foot into the door, right, through the Air Force Academy or ROTC or OTS in order to become a military pilot. So I don't think cost has to be or is a barrier to entry through a lot of the opportunities that exist today. What was the second one you said?
The perceived that it's the good old boy culture.
I thought that was 3. Okay, so the good old boy culture. Yeah, aviation is still a male-dominated career field. But the only way we change that is to enter it. And I can tell you, when I was a lieutenant, there was another female at my first base, and we overlapped for about 6 months. Different squadrons, of course, because we couldn't be in the same squadron. That would be like heresy. But we were in the same bathroom one day, and she didn't talk to me. That is not the aviation community that we have today, whether it's military or civilian. And that is part of that evolution. You know, when I was a young fighter pilot, my second assignment flying the Eagle was up in Alaska. And it was the first time that I had female pilots that I connected with and could talk to. And Gunna Themley was in the 19th Fighter Squadron. And then Trix Jameson came into the 12th with me, and Mamba Jones went into the 19th. So there were 4 girls in Alaska flying the Eagle at the same time. It had never happened, and I'm not sure it's happened since. And we actually flew together once in Gunna's Finney flight, and a lot of people have seen that picture.
Yes.
And so we realized that we needed to combine and connect to grow our experiences together, to be able to, 1, learn from each other, and 2, to pass on. And at the same time that we were discussing that, there were, I think, 5 females down at Luke Air Force Base who were doing the exact same thing. And out of that came the Chick Fighter Pilot Association, or CFPA. And that is how us old people are connecting with young people. And I even wrote a brand new IFT graduate who was an Air Force Academy swimmer to connect with her as she starts pilot training. And it's this connection that we build over time, and podcasts like this and organizations like this, or the 99s or WAI, that really take away any of that lingering good old boy network, because it only disappears as we become part of the community.
Yeah,
Right.
And then,
yeah, I think Carrie, you and I talked about this, and that's where this kind of generated from. Like, we felt like we were kind of being like not upright citizens of our society, of our communities, because we were hiding and getting girls together to talk about the issues we had. And it's like, why did we ever feel that way? You know, like, we should be talking and communicating, connecting, and we should make a good old sister network. What's wrong with that? Like,
Yeah.
it felt very
or just a good network, right? Because I need guys and girls, you know, from all walks of life to really make the best organization that can be out there.
100%.
But there are different challenges, right? Women face some different challenges than men do flying. I'm working right now with my company in AFWorks on urinary relief, which has been a passion of mine for 20 years. Men don't have as many issues as women do due to anatomical structure. That just is what it is. And so we have to be willing to talk about some problems that only face certain populations.
I can pee into a diaper. It's fine.
I cannot.
A few of us just having this conversation as of some of the women that I flew with in some of my special operations assignments. When I first got there, I remember looking around the airplanes that we flew, we didn't even have urinals. And I felt, I mean, there was no one I could go ask, how do I do this? And I remember thinking when the next girl showed up, that she's probably going to think I'm strange, but the first thing I explained to her was how to go to the bathroom. Almost like.
And then a few years later, she's like, oh my God, thank you.
It was both it's just some of the things is when I asked the guys, they looked around and they're like, you know what? We didn't mean to be exclusionary. We just never thought about it. So that's part of bring everybody into the club, because we can discuss these things.
All you needed was a funnel. I've used a funnel all the time.
I'll leave it at a Pringles can.
You know, the third part of your question about how do you manage it all and how do you do a family, and I'm not going to lie, it's not easy, right? I remember sitting down with a female general officer and her telling me, you can't have it all. And her husband getting a little bit pissed because it's like, you had it all. And, you know, we talk or we hear the word balance all the time. You need balance in your life. And I don't think there's anything as balance. Right? The best I've come up with it is a tension, or like a teeter-totter. One day this job takes more, the next day the family needs to take more, but you're just always trying to find the best stance for the day in that time. And it is hard, right? Here I was, the last 4 years of my life, I got married, got pregnant, had a kid, PCS'd, became a group commander, forgot even as a bio major what caused it, so got pregnant again. PCS'd again, learned a new plane, took wing command, and my husband was a commuter airline pilot in my last 2 years. And so there's way many pulls on my plate, and it wasn't easy. And it goes back to where we started the conversation, Jen, of my lesson learned about how to survive that is through self-care. And the last thing that I did in the last 4 years was take care of myself. And I kind of go back to the YMCA with mind, body, and spirit. You got to take care of those. You know, the Air Force has 4 pillars, but I'm just going to make it easy: mind, body, and spirit. And so sleep, nutrition, diet, exercise, you know, mindfulness, spirituality, whatever that is for you, you have to do those. And that's another part that I think women are not as in tune with doing for ourselves. And we need to stop seeing self-care as something that is selfish, because what I have said for a long time is you can't pour from an empty cup. So you have to actually fill yourself first so that you can go give to others. And that's an important part of it. But you can have it all, but you're not going to have everything at 100%. And so you have to understand that and be willing to go, I'm going to give 80, 60, 40 to whatever those things are on my life. And I want to add one more thing if I can on that.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't want to talk too long and not get to the questions. This past year in a fellowship that I got to be a part of, one thing that I realized is in squadron, group, and wing command, in any organization we have in the Air Force, we have a mission. And we usually have priorities associated with that mission, right? Well, as the commander, the reality is I assumed those priorities as Samantha's priorities. And that was also one of those steps in the failure of self-care, because they weren't Samantha's priorities. And that's where I really needed to focus and figure out what are my priorities so that I can learn when to say no, because I'm focusing on how much is in my cup so that I can give to others. And I tell people to actually write them down and put them on a sticky or on your notebook or something so that it's visible to you. Because if you're just like, yeah, I've got my priorities, they're in my head, they're really easy to ignore. But if you actually put it in your phone on a sticky in that notebook that you carry around, and somebody asks you to do a podcast and you're like, is this in my top 3 priorities?
Right.
Do I have time for it? If it's in your priorities and you have time, say yes. If it's not in your priorities, but you have the time, probably say no. And it's teaching ourselves how to say no and fulfilling our passions, you know, with understanding what they are first and foremost.
Thank you for saying yes to our podcast.
Yes.
You're in my passion. Without a doubt, you're in my passion.
And that leads into one of the other things that I listed in our topics that I hoped we could discuss, was that idea of what is that advice that you would give yourself now? Or, you know, what with what you know now, what would you give yourself? What advice would you give yourself with you know, you did too many things.
Yeah, so
because it would be helpful to a girl who's looking to pile that stuff on. Maybe what's that advice you would give?
The first one, you know, is this, right? And see if you can see it. Just says dream big.
Yes.
You know, and the next part associated with that is something that I signed on everything as a Thunderbird, and it's believe in you. And I think, again, every young person needs to hear that, but I think especially young girls need to hear that, because for some reason, something that happens in junior high and high school starts to spread that self-doubt and that voice in your head, and people need to cling to believe in yourself. I was that 6-year-old girl who decided she was going to be a fighter pilot when it wasn't even legal. But I can tell you that believe in you, I lost somewhere along the way. And I stopped really having that conviction in myself that I had as a 6 or an 18-year-old or even that 23-year-old. Mm-hmm. So you need to dream big. You need to believe in yourself. And then the last one really comes from my first fighter squadron, the 94th, and it's throw your hat in the ring. And it goes back to an Air Force Academy lesson. I was so intimidated by one of the assistant coaches that I didn't even try. I was just like, nope, never mind. Fear and intimidation kept me from even trying something. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to be fear and intimidation. It can be anything that holds you back. And I'm going to tell you, just throw your hat in the ring. This is the 94th Fighter Squadron. Throw your hat in the ring. And I remember when I was in Alaska wanting to apply for the Thunderbirds, my group commander told me not to bother. They had just hired a female fighter pilot to be the first ever Thunderbird, female Thunderbird, and they weren't going to have 2 at the same time. Why would they have 2? That's 30% women. What percentage is 30% women in 2006? And I looked at him and I said, thank you, sir. I probably added the words with all due respect, but at least now in my mind, I definitely do. And I applied anyways. And the reason I applied is because I have no regret. If the Air Force chose not to select me because they didn't want 2 female pilots or whatever the reason, I at least knew that I threw my hat in the ring and I tried. And that's the other piece that I would tell younger people, especially, is just try. Some days you're going to fail and some days you're going to succeed, but every endeavor that you reach out for is going to help you grow as an individual.
Yes.
Isn't that funny? Like, and he's like, they probably won't hire you because that would make it 30% female. It's been 100% male for how long? And all of a sudden you have two females that are like badasses and they can't apply at the same time. Like, what the heck is that?
You know, that advice, Sam, reminded me of Jen and I got to chat with Liz Ruth. She's a pilot for the Sophia program out at NASA Armstrong. And she remembered getting ready to go to the Air Force, and that was in the late 70s. And she had somebody tell her something along the lines of, oh, but they're only accepting 14 girls. And her response was, well, why can't one of them be me? But they were basically trying to dissuade her from doing it because, oh, it's only going to be this many. It's so few. You've got a lot of competition. We're trying to talk her out of it. She's like,
absolutely.
Why should one of them be me? So believe in yourself. Dream big. Why should it be you? Why can't it be me?
It's just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg said when somebody asked her when she'd be happy with, the gender equality on the Supreme Court. And she's like, well, it's been 9.
When there are 9
years. Like, what's wrong with 9 women? Like,
there are 9. Yeah, I think it's great.
So that would be my advice to younger people, truly.
Yes, that's fantastic. And that goes for boys and girls, right? And I love what at the very beginning you said, for
it does.
Every child. Like, we just need to make sure that every kid knows that the opportunities are available to them.
And that's the other thing. Like, I'm sure you found out, Sam, and you too, Jen, that a lot of what we've learned along the way has been applicable to other phases of our life and other things that we've sought after and accomplished. So as Jen and I like to say, it goes beyond the flight deck, the lessons that you've learned. So
it does. And, I have to say cockpit because I don't know flight deck.
Yes. No, me
neither. But the first speech that I gave as the wing commander at a pilot training graduation told them just that exact lesson, that the lessons they're going to learn at pilot training are applicable to life. And it really, for me, stems to maintain aircraft control, analyze the situation, and take the appropriate action. If you do those 3 things in your life, you will be able to navigate whatever is thrown at you. Yeah. Maintain aircraft control, figure out where you are, stand tall, be stable, take a breath. Analyze the situation from all different aspects, your own perspective, somebody else's perspective, financially, ethically, morally, whatever it is, and then take the appropriate action that you can live with, that you can look back on, have no regrets, and be proud of.
That have no regrets part, that's huge.
It's hard too.
Hard.
You mentioned Athena's Voice, and I love Tammy Bartlett. I've talked to her a couple times, but you're an active part of that. Like, what if someone wanted to have you, or to speak to them in their group or whatever? How do they get in contact with you? What are their avenues?
Just Google Athena's Voice USA and connect on the page to a great group of women veterans, and it's not just all female fighter pilots. And so we want to share our stories, and the best part about it is our stories, our perspectives, and our lessons, while just like we talked about from the flight deck, may involve aviation. We all have our different passions and purposes. And so our message is going to be tailored and unique to us and to whomever we're speaking to.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can make a very big impact on anybody that you're speaking to. So this has been great.
Yes.
Yeah, I hope to, because I want, our generation of us 3 here to spread to, I don't even know what year it is, 2020, those people graduating high school today, or those 8th graders who are going to graduate in 4 years, to be 300 and then 30,000, so that when we are as old as some of the WASP who are still living today, they are just looking back, or we are looking back and looking at the new landscape of aviation, just in awe, knowing that we laid one brick in that road to all the successes that are going to be happening in the future.
Yes.
And for those women who want to join what is the legacy of WASP, it's the WMA, Women Military Aviators, which I'm a secretary of. I like to put that plug in a little every once in a while. So, if you're listening and you're a female pilot, please consider joining WMA. But yeah, thank you for joining us. Carrie, do you have any other questions or anything else you want to talk about today?
No, I just wanted to say thanks to Sam. It's great to catch up with you. It's been quite a few years, but
Absolutely
appreciate you taking the time to share your story, share your advice, and we'd like to continue having a conversation with you maybe someday in the future.
Absolutely. And I just want to thank both of you for being entrepreneurs, understanding your passion and your purpose, and really making the landscape change and be different and accessible, to little girls so that they can dream big and believe in themselves and replace us, because we're going to be has-beens or already are.
That's right.
I want to look back and see their accomplishments.
Absolutely.
So for anybody watching, please subscribe, hit the like button, share with us, and Sam, would be great if you shared once we get this published out in your network. Really appreciate it, and as much as we can get our faces out there to show what it looks like to be a fighter pilot and a former Thunderbirds pilot, an amazing woman. Thank you so much for joining us, Sam.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.
Welcome to Grow Her Wings, a podcast by the Malou Project, a 501c3 based in Jacksonville, Florida, with a mission to connect girls to aviation. We are your hosts, Jen and Carrie, and we invite you to join us as we meet new people, talk to old friends, and learn new lessons on the path to inspire more of us to grow our wings.